This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Loose on the Lead for this Sunday morning. Seth Merrill from Equidaily.com, Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's At the Races. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
Welcome back.
Was I
Couple
gone?
of weeks.
I've been gone?
Yeah.
I'll be gone the next 3 weeks.
Welcome back and goodbye.
Exactly. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. And if I don't see you tomorrow, all right.
But we're happy to have you here today. A lot of action coming up at about 10:30. We will have coverage of the ARC, which is a phenomenal race. I mean, it's oh man, it is incredible. Trev, last year's winner, trying to validate her 4-year-old campaign. Just away, coming in from Japan, I think is really interesting. Ruler of the World with Frankie Dettori on board for Aiden O'Brien, Al Kazim in here, Kingston Hill. This is just a really, really fun race. There's a field of 20 in here. Tagruta, also very, very interesting. So again, we'll cover that coming up bottom of the hour. Also Dave Grenning, Jenny Reese joining us, and plenty of racing action and news to touch on. And as you came in, Steve, you said really top news of the day that has come out, the decision by the Breeders' Cup on Doug O'Neill. Doug O'Neill winds up with a 45-day suspension handed down by the New York Racing Association. The New York Racing Authorities, not the New York Racing Association, the Gaming Commission. What I found interesting there was, boy, it just kind of shows how slow the wheels of justice in horse racing are. It was a 2013 violation.
Right.
Just gets decided in October. But they had made it a 45-day suspension starting after the Breeders' Cup, which was notable. Well, the Breeders' Cup said no deal. The Breeders' Cup is now denying Doug O'Neill entries into the Breeders' Cup this year, and he's come out and said, you know, I'm not going to appeal that. I'll agree to their decision. And so Doug O'Neill, with some legitimate contenders aimed for the Breeders' Cup, won't be able to enter him in his name anyway.
Well, he's got a bunch of 2-year-olds. He's also got, of
Golden
course,
Sense.
Private Zone, who was coming back his way, as well as Golden Sense from yesterday, beaten Azat by the import from Asia, which is a story in itself. This situation with O'Neill is going to go from bad to worse, because for starters, what's involved here, oxazepam, that's a Class 2 violation. I'm fairly permissive when it comes to medication overages. When there's simply items that are used as part of the treatment every day for horses, and horses test over a permissible level, which typically is just a metabolism scenario. When it comes to actual items that should not be in a racehorse, it's a different story. This is an item that's not supposed to be in a racehorse, period. Even though it's a depressant, this is a human drug that's treated in the case of alcoholics. It's a alcoholism stabilizing depressant. I don't know how else to put it. It's a product that has no business on the racetrack. And O'Neill, gives the usual bon mots about trainer responsibility, and he'll accept the penalty. Well, this penalty is also going to trip the situation in California, because he was operating under certain rulings that this is going to trip penalties in California. So there's going to be an additional 6-month situation involving this with O'Neill. And O'Neill, has been just involved in too many of the peripheral violation arenas. He was a milkshaker, despite saying he really didn't know anything about milkshaking. That wasn't true. And milkshaking, too, was something that I've always considered fairly innocuous when it comes to these areas. But it's enough already with certain guys that are recidivists when it comes to these violations. And O'Neill is just helping the group of people that are hypercritical about this portion of the game. And didn't we acknowledge a couple of years ago that trainers had to be really careful and had to really take the landscape, the changing landscape, more seriously. And Doug O'Neill, who seems, and I've known a long time too, I mean, is very likable and all that, and does a lot of the right things outside the game. But this is just, at a certain point, it becomes more than those that try to support the horseman community overall. It becomes a lot to deal with, and really kind of trips a certain disdain and disgust.
Yeah, and I agree. You read about him. You've talked to him on the radio show, I'm sure. I'm not that familiar with him personally.
A long time, going back to the big gelding. What's his name?
But I'm reading about him, reading interviews with him. He sends out tweets all the time. Seems like a really nice guy, and certainly, I think you have to acknowledge he's got some talent. But as you say, these pile up after a while. And I was also, when that first story came out about the 45-day suspension, as I say, to me, it also doesn't reflect well on the industry that this is a 2013 violation getting adjudicated in October 2014. But then they threw in, he had a similar violation down at Parks that runs, and the penalty runs concurrently, which I thought was strange as well, why that decision was made. But the Breeders' Cup steps up and says, no dice, and now Doug O'Neill is asking that New York move up his penalty so he can start to serve it as soon as possible. But as you know, this is going to potentially kick off that 180 days.
It absolutely is going to. I mean, anybody that does the calendar work is going to show that this violation fell within the probationary period that the CHRB had handed him. So it just, and I do give Breeders' Cup credit. Breeders' Cup has a rule. It's not like Breeders' Cup stepped in and capriciously made this decision. They've got a rule that says anybody under investigation and in the circumstances that O'Neill's going to find himself is not, is not welcome at the Breeders' Cup. Good, and at some point. I think a lot of people certainly have respect for a guy like Paul Redham, but at a certain point, you also have to, begin to wonder when, a certain group of owners with somebody like, that employs somebody like Doug O'Neill begins to say that. They're stepping away, and that they need to see something.
Yeah, to make that happen, the Breeders' Cup has to say. And
the horses
that have run in his name in the last 60 days or 90 days, then the owners would key into that. Let's talk a little bit about a couple of news stories that came out at the beginning of this week that we kind of alluded to last week, but they hadn't played out. The other shoe hadn't dropped. Victor Espinoza and the 7-day suspension out in Southern California for the ride in the Awesome Again, which I just found. I said a couple times this week, I don't want to say shocking, that's too much, but it was surprising because I said if that ride had been a Thursday in a claiming race, you wouldn't have heard twice about it. So that was a little bit surprising. And then a couple of days later, Junior Alvarado got the suspension we thought he probably deserved. He gets 15 days for his move in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. So a couple of suspensions there. One I agree with, one was a little bit of a head scratcher to me.
And it's amazing how much specifically the Espinoza story and the Espinoza incident involving Sky Kingdom and him going after Mike Smith and Shared Belief the way he did. And as, I completely agree with your take in terms of the spotlight on the circumstance and how much attention it got. The subsequent and the horse player lament about, oh, this just shows how little regard there is for horse players, because what about the people that were betting Sky Kingdom? If you were betting Sky Kingdom, you need a new hobby. That's number one. That's the first order of business. Whether Victor Espinoza was doing this, and the much more intriguing portion is the suggestion that's actually rather clever, that Espinoza may have been doing this specifically for some personal pique in terms of California Chrome.
Yeah, Richard Migliore brought that up.
Mick
on the
brought it up on
National
Racing,
yeah.
and a couple of other places that suggestion was made that, Victor could benefit with California Chrome. I don't know how he benefits per se, but if California Chrome gets a little edge, if Shared Belief gets beat in this race, it's one mark against the Shared Belief. That makes it maybe a little easier for people to vote for California Chrome, depending on what happens in the Breeders' Cup Classic. That's a pretty crazy...
Yeah, it was kind of a clever conspiracy theory.
Yeah, and it's not so far-fetched, frankly. Yeah. But I agree.
But he also made a great point, and Jeremy Plunk made it with me earlier this week when he said, the favorite won the race, and Sky Kingdom, longest shot, ran last. So everybody wound up where they should.
And the other element of this is, that for all the carrying on about making things easy for FedBiz and for the machinations involved in one Baffert horse and the other Baffert horse, in reality, it opened the door for that Euro. For the I'm going to forget the name, the Argentinian horse, it opened the door for him to come in and harass FedBiz and challenge FedBiz early in the race. If that doesn't happen, the FedBiz may actually get an easier lead earlier in the race. So I agreed that the 7-day suspension seemed a little bit of a hypersensitive reaction to the situation. Much more importantly, is the Junior Alvarado stupidity, and he's a blockhead. I mean, there isn't any two ways about it. What are you doing on the turn trying to jump in 2 pads? And for those that say, that he didn't know where Wicked Strong, he didn't know where Wicked Strong is. What are you talking about? He knew exactly where he was the whole backstretch. So suddenly he thought that Wicked Strong was somewhere else, a couple hundred yards further down into the race. It's nonsense. And at the same time, no one's saying that he was trying to force an issue and clip heels and injure Rajiv. That's not true. But he ends up endangering not just Rajiv and Wicked Strong. There were another 6 trailing horses, 7 trailing horses. You could have had a pile up here.
If Wicked Strong had gone down.
If Wicked Strong goes down, you've got yourself an absolute disaster. And so the 15 days on his case is short. I mean, he should have gotten at least 30, and then if he doesn't appeal it, he gets 15. It's unbelievable. And there's people who came out rightfully and said, it's time for these jocks that when they do something that dangerous, it's time for them to sit out until the injured jockey comes back. And you know what? That's not such a crazy suggestion. Guy gets put on the ground for 90 days, you sit along with him. How about that? That'll change some riders' approach to things. So Alvarado, Junior's fairly aggressive. I like him on the turf. He's won races in our silks, and I respect some of the ways he approaches certainly his turf riding. But this was just an incredibly poor decision, and
Rajiv was lucky with only a broken arm.
Just a broken arm.
Half of the field went over.
Yeah, exactly. One thing too, the stewards. The New York stewards take a certain amount of responsibility in this because they've done such a poor job staying on top of the colony and calling the colony in and pointing out herding incidents. I mean, nobody's worse with this than Javier Castellano, who's like an Australian sheepdog, for God's sakes, when it comes to herding. It's ridiculous. That was a good one. I got to remember that. Javier, he was penalized in Toronto for that. I mean, the herding that he does. So the stewards have to police the jocks colony a lot better and call them in when they're doing things like this and say to them, what were you thinking here? Film, the old film patrol where they would sit down and show films, and young riders in particular, teach them a lesson. and shake them up. And it's got to happen. We'll talk to Dave Grenig about it as well.
Yeah, before we go to the break, why don't we just take a quick look at the Indiana Derby, because we got to get to Grenig and then the ARC after that. But I did want to show the stretch run of last night's Indiana Derby, just because Atreides was in this. The really nice runner, 3 for 3, 3 triple-digit Beyer wins down at Gulfstream Park. Stone Street runner for Marty Wolfson. Boy, Atreides never got into it last night. It's the even money favorite. Atreides is the number 3 horse, and just he's back there on the outside in the backpack there, and just never gets into it from beginning to end. The race will wind up being won by East Hall. A couple of starts back had won the Ohio Derby last time, of course, 6th in the Super Derby, but had some trouble there. Running second is Vickers in trouble, the 2-1 second choice. But again, just wanted to show that because Atreides, who potential superstar, but again, one of those horses who runs well down at Gulfstream, but on the move didn't prove to be too much last night.
Well, and I think Marty Wolfson may have to rethink his decision to go take him to Indiana to begin with instead of coming to New York. And there were a couple of options that he had in New York, including the Kelso. The nice story here is Bill Kaplan and East Hall, who adds an Indiana Derby to his Ohio Derby and some of his other earlier successes this year in South Florida. This is a really nice horse. What exactly was Vickers in Trouble's excuse in here? You got to be
top
kidding.
Of the stretch, yeah. It looked like
I mean, that horse was 2-5 at the top of the stretch and gets corralled. And happy for Bill Kaplan and everybody involved with East Hall. I thought this was a really fun performance and a nice win, and gets a respectable 97 Beyer out of this. Tis Windy, you know, that was earlier in the Oaks, the Indiana Oaks, if you weren't watching last night. And Carl Nafzger, for a guy who was supposed to retire 5 years ago, Carl Nafzger continues to win races. Brian Hernandez aboard, and Kiss Moon. David Vance, another guy who wins races. Kiss Moon wins the Tawi. Tom Amos, with quiet success, wins the Mary Holman George. And the Schaefer, that was a nice performance from Abraham. Bill Mott and Michael Dubb and company. Abraham wins that Schaefer Memorial Mile, and that was a good field. And it was very strange. You know, it was up on the lead, then kind of came back and then rallied. But the Indiana Focus, the Indiana Derby, East Hall, Louis Saez aboard for Bill Kaplan, the trainer of your people, the Pinnacle people.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, and it was a really nice night out at Indiana Downs last night with the Derby and the undercard. All right, let's head to the break now. Get Dave Grenig to join us, talk a little bit about Belmont yesterday, a couple of nice 2-year-old stakes.
And during the week, 3 Alarm Fire.
Oh, yeah.
And Puka, and there was as much going on at Belmont early in the week as there was on the weekend.
Yeah, so we'll be right back with Dave Grenig after this. Stay tuned.
Go Zephyr kicking clear, and Go Zephyr is pulling away impressively.
Hysterical Lady, Ginger Punch to win it.
And it's Wilco in front, and he's going to pull off a huge upset here.
But it's Round Pond going on to take the distaff.
Awesome again. Star of 10 Grade 1 winners, 4 Breeders' Cup champions, and 4 multimillionaires, standing at Adena Springs.
Face it, most horse racing websites are just too much clutter, too much to navigate through. Next time, log on to capitalotb.com. Our newly designed website is easier than ever to use, with all the information the professional horse player needs. capitalotb.com.
It's more than just a sports bar. It's Stadium Cafe. Located at 389 Broadway in Saratoga, it's the place to be for great times and great food. Their menu features everything from gourmet entrees to your favorite wraps and sandwiches. Or maybe you just want to grab a beer and catch the game. So what can be better than that? How about 2 Stadium Cafes? There's also the Westside Stadium, right up the road at 112 Congress Street. Same great menu, same great service. Whether you're hanging at the bar or just relaxing outside on their spacious covered patio, you'll always leave knowing you'll be back again.
We love, above all, the staff. We love Dave Harmon, and the food is fantastic.
Not 1, but 2. 112 Congress Street, 389 Broadway. Guaranteed to be a home run.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTV.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTV.com. Log on today.
We're back on Loose on the Lead on this Sunday morning, a busy Sunday morning, of course, over at Longchamp. They are running the Arc Card and, of course, Belmont, the Longchamp of Long Island. And we're happy to welcome Dave Grettig from the Daily Racing Form. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. No one up there yet?
Not, it was 40 degrees, but it's going to be a beautiful fall day and a much nicer day at Belmont today for the Matron and the Futurity than we had yesterday, where the rain it didn't make things miserable, but it had an effect on the card.
Yeah, you look at my shoes and make things miserable, but no, yeah, it obviously impacts the card. I mean, they came home trotter time in the Frizette. I mean, just a 6/100 under 28 seconds for that final quarter.
We're going to roll the Frizette. Let's dive right into it. And, of course, this was a race where Cavorting had been highly touted coming into this. We were all waiting for her return to the races. And she actually packs it in, throws down the anchor here on the turn. And Samantha Siegel's homebred with Michelle Nevin helping her get her first Grade 1. And, gosh, this was impressive, at least from that standpoint. By the Moon, the Indian Charlie filly romps home.
There was nothing impressive about this race. The nice that Michelle Nevin got her first Grade 1, but when you come home, a final quarter in almost 28 seconds, Captain Treacherous could have won this race yesterday. The wet track obviously had an impact on it. It was a tiring track, at least for this race, because 3 races later, it certainly didn't seem to be that tiring for Daredevil, who ran almost 3 seconds faster than did By the Moon. I think what this race showed is that no two sloppy tracks are the same, because you couldn't have looked any better than Condo Commander did in the spot at Saratoga. She was certainly not stone cold fantastic yesterday, Condo Commander. She was awful. And the whole race was just kind of a throw out to me. And maybe these horses are better on dry tracks, but this was just not an ugly race. Congratulations to Michelle Nevin for getting her first Grade 1. I don't want to, poo-poo that party any more than I already had, but it just wasn't that great a race.
Well, let's turn to the more impressive performances, and everybody's talking about Daredevil, but to be honest, it's unfair to forget that Upstart was within a couple of lengths and ran very well in this spot. I thought as well, and should be included in conversation, but Daredevil with a big fig, a 107 coming out of this. It was a big Saturday for Todd Pletcher, both in Kentucky and at Belmont.
If somebody else had lost a horse like Competitive Edge for the year, they probably would still not be over it yet. But for Pletcher, he just has an assembly line of talented 2-year-olds. And, I was a little leery about why Daredevil was 8-5. I'm not leery about that anymore. He was very impressive yesterday. Just the way he kind of relaxed and just sat out. In his debut, he's out on the engine there in 44 and change. Yesterday, they're going 46-1. He's just sitting there waiting for Javier to ask the question. And really, Javier never hit him. It was all just a hand ride throughout the race. It was a really impressive performance. Now, granted, he's now 2 for 2, both on wet tracks, so we just see what he does on a fast track. But as Pletcher said afterwards, he said, "Look, this horse has showed us in the morning that he was pretty special, and all those, everything that he had done in the morning was on dry track." It certainly makes the Breeders' Cup Juvenile a lot more interesting of a race than maybe people had thought going into this weekend, because American Pharoah looked so good at Santa Anita, and now he's got some real competition, not only Daredevil, but Carpe Diem, who looked very good at Keeneland.
Well, and got to mention, for those that might not be aware, that Daredevil is the half-brother of Albertus Maximus. There's plenty of precedent for precocious stakes success, and for Let's Go Stable, this was a $250,000, $260,000 yearling purchase, and he's a more than ready. Arguably, this is down the road a horse that might be better on turf ultimately, but in the meantime, it absolutely adds a lot more intrigue to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile race that had American Pharoah as the leader in the clubhouse as of last week.
And I still think he is because of the home court advantage there. His race was on a Santa Anita track that you're probably where the Breeders' Cup's going to be held, and it's going to be a fast track. And I'm not saying Daredevil can't repeat this type of performance on a fast track, but running that big a number, which I was still a little bit surprised that it got that huge number. I got to think it was a difficult racetrack to make speed figures for anybody on yesterday, given how wet it was. And, you know, I know it got a little bit drier, but this race was only run an hour or so after the Frizette, and I know she ran like he ran 2.80 seconds faster than the other horse, but still, it's a number that's very, very high. Let me just go back to Upstart for a second, because I don't want to, you know, dismiss him. He ran a very good race. He was probably back a little bit further than trainer Rick Violet of Life. There weren't a whole lot of horses making up a ton of ground yesterday, and he did make up some ground and finish almost 13 lengths clear of the rest of the field. And whether they decide to go to California or not, or stay home and go the National Remsen route, remains to be seen. But I think Upstart, you know, is a horse with definitely a future. But you know, whether it's going to be in California or not in 4 weeks from now, I don't know.
Let's also slip in a conversation quickly about the Hill Prince, Dave, and the Grade 3 $500,000 event drew a wonderful field. It, of course, is kind of taking the spot of the Jamaica. And Ring Weekend justifies a lot of the expectations for St. Elias and for West Point. Graham Motion is over in France, so he was not on hand, but he was a little worried about the soft turf that took tourists out of the race and may have affected some others in here, including Mr. Speaker, who seemed uncomfortable for quite a while, and then may have had a little bit of issue when he did try to rally. What was your take on the Hill Prince?
Yeah, it's hard to know what to make of it. I mean, you could have made a case that he could have won the race, and that horse I really never considered at all in this race, and he ran tremendous to be second, and there was a bumping incident late in the stretch. It's funny, Ring Weekend owned by West Point, they also own Twilight Eclipse. There was a bumping incident late in the stretch of the Joe Hirsch a week ago, and they left that up, and rightfully so, they left this up yesterday. Ring Weekend, they tried to get him, make him a dirt horse, like everybody tries to do with a 3-year-old, but his future's definitely on the grass, and I think he's probably a better horse on firmer ground than he is on soft, but he sort of handled it yesterday, and I guess we'll test my theory when he goes to California. He's going to run something called the Twilight Derby, which is on the Friday of the Breeders' Cup card.
All right, Dave, we've got to shift out now to Longchamp as they're loading in for the ARC. Just to give people a little idea here, number 2 is Ruler of the World, 3 is Al Kazim, 7 Just Away, comes in from Japan, 14 Kingston Hill, 8 last year's winner Trev, and 18 Tagruta, the really phenomenal 3-year-old filly. Currently, Tagruta is the favorite in here at 5-1. Some of the other odds, Just Away, the Japanese runner, is 8-1. Ruler of the World is... where are we? 17-1. So there are some decent prices here. Trev at 13-1. Shift out now to Longchamp for the 2014 edition of the ARC. We'll be back with more on Loose on the Lead right after the race. Stay tuned.
He beat See the Moon in the course at Price von Baden, and his trainer Jean-Pierre Carvalho told us that he ran in that race as a preparation for the ARC.
Whether he's going to be quite good enough remains to be seen. I just think
the draw is going to go against Ivanhoe. I know that the Baden-Baden race doesn't have a bad record coming into this particular event. That was a quality field this year. If See the Moon was going around here, he would be very much favourite. He's beaten See the Moon, but the draw is going to go very much against him.
Al Kazim just going in, a surprise contender. He went off to stud last year, fertility problems, and he's back on the racetrack. He's not been quite up to his best, but his owners have decided to run.
Just sorry to say that Rule of the World's got the white cap. I was just getting a bit confused. So Trev has got the first colours of Al Shakab Racing, white cap on Rule of the World, and Ecto, yellow. Is it yellow?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, yellow cap for Ecto. I think that's the one to be on.
I think Ecto, here he is just in the screen, taking a turn. He will come on certainly a good deal for the Prix Niel, because he's a really big, strong, powerful horse, and he was going back after a 6-month or so break, so I think that will have done him good to come up to full fitness.
Ivanhoe going in. Yep. Yeah, I think Ecto's a big player here. I also think Harp Star's got the brilliance to win it. Whether she'll do it today, though, there's a big ask for jockey Yugat Kuwago. Hope he doesn't overdo the waiting tactics. Fascinating. Yep. So, are you ready to go, everybody?
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it. Hope you are at home as well. Yeah. Let's hand over to Ian for the call on the Qatar Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe.
Thanks, Mike. The final couple are going in. Ecto takes his position. Goldchip's been a bit of a handful down to the start, but he's in now. So 2,400 metres, this fascinating race. Away they go for the Arc de Triomphe. A huge roar from the crowd as Gold Chip is the final one to leave the starting gates. Ruler of the World is the leader early on. Not a strong pace either. Montviron, Al-Kazim, Avenir Sertan. She's taken quite a strong hold. Ivanhoe and Kingston Hill from high draws have got into prominent places. They've got into third or fourth places. Gold Chip's the back marker. Harpstar is 1 length ahead of him. Freeport Lux just away towards the back of the main group as well. Now they settle and the pacemaker goes on. Montviron leading, Kingston Hill right behind him. Togruta up there into fourth place. Blue colours travels strongly. Rule of the World, Avenir Sertan the next two. Flincher, Ivanhoe, Al-Kazim behind those. And then we have Dolnir and Spirit Jim. Tapestry in the dark blue colours. Chiquita is next. Ecto is next to her. And then Siljan Saga, Prince Gibraltar just away. Couple of lengths away to Freeport Lux, a gap then to the red cap of Harpstar, and the grey Gold Chip is right at the rear of the field. Now they're at the top of the hill, swinging right-handed. There'll be a good 20 lengths first to last, and it's Montviron leading. Andrea Zen has got Kingston Hill right behind him in second place. On the rails, Avenir Sertan, the light blue jacket. Then Ruler of the World travels strongly as they go across the sprint course for Frankie Dettori in fourth. Togruta, Flinchard, the next two. Trev travels strongly right against the rails. Jane, fifth or sixth position. Ivanhoe is next from Al-Kazim. And then comes Tapestry. They're into the false straight. Already they're heading towards home in the Arc de Triomphe. Montviron leading, about 2 lengths ahead to Kingston Hill in second. Avenir Sertan is in third. Ruler of the World and Trev the next two. Togruta, Flinchard, Ivanhoe behind those. Gold Chip, the grey, has launched from the back of the field. Harpstar still last. This is the home straight in the Arc de Triomphe. And it's still Montviron, the pacemaker, in front. Trev, look to the left. Avenir Sertan is coming there. Ruler of the World behind those. Togruta down the centre, but Trev, look at her. She's stormed through to the lead now with 200 metres to go. Avenir Sertan into second. Togruta down the centre in third place. Trevor's in front by 2 lengths. Is she going to win a second arc? Flincher's after in second. Togruta behind those. She's done it. Trev back to her best, has won the arc again. Flincher was second. Togruta in third. Dolnir and Prince Gibraltar and just away behind those. Then Harpstar, Al-Kazim, Rule of the World further back to Montviron and Freeport Lux were the last couple home. She has done it. Back to her best. Thierry Janet on number 8. Trev is the winner of the Arc de Triomphe for the second year in a row. The first horse to do it in 36 years. There's the winning owner connections. Flincher was home in second place, the best run of his career. Togruta, a very honourable third for her. And Kingston Hill, from a really difficult draw, has run a great race in fourth position. But Mike, fantastic. She's done it again.
Oh. How about that?
8-1, 18, and 4. Trev gets it done. Trev, there's horse for courses and there's horse for races. And if you're going to pick a race to win a couple years in a row, nothing wrong with the Arc.
Dave, this is really quite a story because for a month, for 6 weeks, all we've heard internationally is how she couldn't possibly come back and win again.
Well, good to hear that their experts are just as bad as our experts. That was a pretty strong performance. I think maybe they were trying to get the price a little bit. You got 15 to 1 on last year's ARC winner. That's pretty huge. That was some performance and some ride by Thierry Janet, who just slipped through the inside there, and this filly really took off. That's nice to see. And kudos to Cricket Head, who's among the legendary trainers of Europe, and that was quite a performance.
Unbelievable. And I'll tell you one thing, that in terms of Breeders' Cup ramifications, so to speak, the Fugue was forced to retire. But Dave, you look back to that Prince of Wales where Trev was third to her and to Magician, and gosh, it would have been nice to have the Fugue back one more time for for another try in the U.S. in the turf.
It would have. I think Magician is going to come back.
He's coming.
We'll see if he's in the type of form that he was in last year, because he isn't. But this is some rail skimming ride here by Janet here. And, what a terrific race mare, and kudos to them, and again kudos to Cricket. Although it does open quite nicely. Watching the replay again, it does open quite nicely for this mare. Sort of like it's almost like Jerry Bailey was on her.
Let's turn back to Belmont and Dave. 3 performances from the week before the weekend even arrived. There was Bakken and his big win, then 3 Alarm Fire, and we should mention the filly Puka, who really don't know what to make of that. But give us your take on the other 2 wins.
Well, 3 Alarm Fire was quite impressive. And, you know, you sort of got a little excited about 3 Alarm Fire about 5 days before the race when the horse he beat last Friday, in his last race, Liam's Nats came back and won so impressively on a Friday. And then this horse comes back, like right after that horse won, the entries come out for Wednesday, and you see 3 Alarm Fire in. It's like, okay, we'll get to watch, you know, see how good a performance it really was when he beat him in Saratoga, and he validated that effort. And talking to the connections yesterday, or earlier Friday, is much like they're going to go to the Discovery and try and stretch him out to a mile and 1/8. And probably the right move. I think you find out earlier than later about his distance capabilities. I guess you could always run the Cigar Mile if that race sort of comes up, which is the same weekend, the same day. Actually, it's not. I'm sorry. The Discovery's earlier than that. There's the Cigar Mile if they want to cut back and if that race comes up light. But there's some talent there, and we'll see how he's only had 3 starts. And, it looks like there's something to work with moving forward. My only reservation about getting too excited about a horse like that is I remember, Romanch last year won the Discovery with a big number, and we were looking forward to seeing this horse perform as a 4-year-old, and really aside from his 3rd in that mile, he's been a huge disappointment. So that's why I sort of reserved my judgment on him. Bakken is one of those horses that's fragile but fast, and he seems to, he was pretty fast the other day, and it was a solid performance. I think they had the option of either running there or running the Phoenix next Keeneland. They took the path of least resistance, and I guess they're considered the Breeders' Cup Sprint if they can get in. I don't know if that race has enough horses that might overfill. He would have a difficult time getting in if that's the case. But he ran within half to 3/4 of a length of Palace back in spring off of a long layoff. He's only had the 2 starts this year. If he's competitive with Palace, I think he's competitive with many of the top sprinters around.
Well, and let's quickly fold in today's action. The 3/4 grade 2s, the Matron and the Futurity, long histories for both of these races in New York, and actually fields are okay. These are both interesting races. Even the short field Futurity, I thought, with the 2 Invaders coming in from Kentucky, I thought this was a fun race.
Yeah, it's a shame that it didn't get any more. I think they have to really evaluate what to do with this race and on the calendar, and either to have it at all or make it different times. That when you come off the Champagne, Champagne only had 6, and this only has 5, which really to me is 4. Randy Prasad's horse in here it looks like he's getting started early on his helping the racing office still races. Heavenville is interesting for a trainer, Lynn Whiting, who doesn't run very many horses in New York. I could only find 3. At Belmont, 1 at Aqueduct, and about a decade or so ago, he's able to Saratoga for 1 summer. He's based in Kentucky, but he shipped the horse to Parks because the money's just better, and he knew he had a good horse. And he ran 2 fifths off the track record, 4.5 furlongs in his debut, and may have run better than that in his 2nd start. Now he's got to go up against a pretty talented runner in Blofeld, who was quite impressive in his debut. Chasing down a pretty speedy horse in Signature Cat, and then, he beat El Kabir that day. El Kabir came back and took the maiden race pretty impressively and was not very good yesterday in the mud. And then there's Cinco Charlie, if you go, if you think experience counts, which I do. Cinco Charlie is 3 for 5 in a couple of state wins. Have to deal with the rails, probably going to have to use that speed. But I agree with you. For short field, it's quite interesting. And I'm looking at, maybe Hebbernville to give you what probably might be a 4-horse field if Mr. Amos does come out. Maybe he could offer perhaps a touch of value.
Well, and then the girls' race, they filled that box up a lot better with 8 going in the Matron, and this has got some opportunity. I don't think Bobby Flay's homebred filly has to win.
I agree. I think as a betting race, this is a pretty interesting field here. Darling Sky was very impressive in her debut at Park, winning by 7 in plus lengths, and she came back in 3 weeks later and didn't run as well in the Spinaway, but there's really only 1 horse in the Spinaway who failed to stop, and that was the winner that day, Condo Commando. Now after yesterday, you had the 2nd place finisher come back for the state, grade 1. You have 3rd place finisher, Angela Renee, came back and won grade 1. So now Darling Sky comes in here with getting back to a dry track, and The only thing I'm a little worried about, and I got my cue there from trainer Butch Reed, is the rail. Because she says she doesn't really like being too in tight, and hopefully jockeys can either get her out of there or get her and put her on the lead, or get her some position and maybe swing outside. If Michelle Nevin was going to win a graded stakes this weekend with a 2-year-old, I would have thought it might be called a Silver Lining more so than By the Moon, and maybe she'll win too. I thought the High Dollar Woman race at Saratoga, July 27th, was going to turn out to be a pretty productive race. She was fourth that day. Then she came back and broke a maiden, beating Skipaloot. Of course, I didn't think she could run down, and she did. Skipaloot's also back in here. I thought it was a pretty wide-open race. I don't have an excuse for Impressive Humor's unimpressive performance in the Adirondack, but if she's able to run back to her debut, she fits in here as well.
And what about Save Rock and Roll for Joe Orsino on the outside? I thought could come with a late run if the pace gets hot.
Yeah, possibly. I think she's just a step up in class for her a bit. Her debut was okay, probably better than okay, but that was in the slop. Then she caught the fast track, and maybe having the rail doesn't look like she's out very well, and still was only beating 3 lengths in the sorority there. I do think those teams, as a whole, a better group of fillies here. But being drawn on the outside should help.
Well, and there's also a nice $54,000 carryover today.
Yes, and we have an 11-race card today. It'll start in the 6th race, the 5th, 6th, and just for those who aren't aware, with our grass situation today, the 2nd, 5th, and 6th are off. The 7th, 9th, and 11th are on. So the first leg of the 6th, 6th is off the turf, but the other 3 turf races in the sequence will be on.
Well, and Dave Grenig is always on when it comes to covering the action on the backstretch at Belmont Park and everywhere else in New York, and soon at Santa Anita. When do you head out?
I think I leave 3 weeks from today, as a matter of fact. I go out, watch the work to Belmont in the morning, and catch flight that afternoon.
And speaking of that, Dave, before we let you go, what you think of Wise Dan yesterday after the race up at Saratoga, where he just held off Optimizer? Folks wondered if he was the same Wise Dan. What did you think of yesterday's performance?
I thought he ran a tremendous race. To get off slow like that, and then between horses, and then finally Johnny was able to get into the outside, and that sort of was the old Wise Dan. I thought. I agree. The race in Saratoga, you were a little skeptical. I'm sure you needed that race, but for him to come back and run that race against that field, I thought it was a better field. I think Grand Arch is an underrated horse, and actually that was where my money went yesterday. And while I was happy to see, a little sad to rip up that ticket on Grand Arch, I was happy to see Wise Dan win. It was nice to see a horse like that come back to that level and still make the Breeders' Cup that much more interesting on the day.
Part of a 5-win afternoon for John Velasquez.
You think about it, a year ago, or 11 months ago, this guy was in the hospital in very serious condition when he fell in the Breeders' Cup in one of those earlier races. And I was looking up today, and he's come back. He's fourth in the standings in terms of money won this year, and he's second, one off of 1 or 2 wins off of Javier Castellano and graded stakes wins. This guy's really a remarkable athlete, and I know he's not riding as many horses as some of these other guys, but he's had a really, really good year. And I hope he can stay healthy for the next month in the Breeders' Cup. And he deserves a big Breeders' Cup day as well.
Well, seems like it is at hand. And, of course, he won a natural late pick 4 yesterday. Yes. Unbelievable at Keeneland, including Day at the Spa and Carpe Diem, as well as Wise Dan. And then the nightcap on that very impressive Empress. Enchantress, that won the nightcap. If you haven't seen that, here's a Coolmore $950,000 Pletcher purchase. And Pletcher has an unbelievable affinity for these Malibu Moon babies, particularly with girls. When you think about Life at 10 was one, and that filly that sadly died, the Great House, the Peachtree filly that had an untimely death. But when it comes to Malibu Moons, Dave, Pletcher, he goes right to him.
He, like I said, he's got an assembly line of 2-year-olds there, and I'm sure a lot of people were busy doing other things when that Enchantress ran and won, and there's just another one that he's stockpiling them, males and females, for the fall and for next year.
Well, as always, Dave Grenig, a pleasure. Looking forward to a couple more weeks building up to Breeders' Cup as the fields fill out. What are you covering for this year for DRF? Which races?
Right now I have the juvenile. Hey, I'm not sure if this is out there. I don't know if this is the plan, but just according to Twitter, that was Trev's last race. He's being retired. So
good way to go out.
Exactly. But, I got the juvenile right now, and I'm sure I'll pick up another race, possibly one of those juvenile turf races on Friday, given that the guys who are covering those races for us right now are going to the Breeders' Cup, and being that Chad Brown pretty much has every American-based runner in those fields, I will probably be assigned to one or both of those races.
I love it. Dave Grenig, thanks so much.
Okay, guys, thanks.
Dave Grenig, everybody. And I don't know, are we staying or are we going?
Why don't we take a break and we'll come back with Jenny.
Jenny Reese. Next, we'll talk about Keeneland's action. The first 2 days with the new track. Back after this, Loose on the Lead.
I don't know. You hang around here. What do you think?
The Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back. That's right. The 2014 Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back, and it's your chance to win thousands in cash and prizes, and a seat at the 2015 Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas. This month's contest is the Thanksgiving Special on November 8th. So sign up today, online at capitalotb.com, or stop in at the Clubhouse Racebook.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
I didn't want to get just any degree after high school.
Horse racing has always been my passion. I was already a lawyer.
When I was young, my dad took me to the races. The sound of the crowd. I still remember.
I'm 40, and I don't want to stay in a career I don't love.
I want to follow my passion.
Follow your passion at the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program.
Hey race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, and amazing Vegas-style atmosphere. The Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany.
Welcome back to Loose on the Lead. Seth Merrow and Steve Bick. Happy to be joined now by Jenny Reese of the Louisville Courier-Journal. Good morning, Jenny.
Good morning, Ben.
Wanted to plug you in because we just talked with Dave Grenig about some of the nice stakes action in New York yesterday, but there's been a couple of days of nice stakes racing down at Keeneland. We wanted to touch on that, and we'll hit on some specifics in a moment. But before we do that, now 2 days under our belts of racing on the new dirt track at Keeneland. Give us the reactions you've heard.
Very favorable. They were favorable going in, and people wanted to wait and see till there was racing. And the first day they showed a little bit of a wrinkle when it rained. And maybe that was good because that's what people said, well, wait till it rains. It reminds me a lot of Churchill Downs at its best. Dried pretty quickly, apparently drains very well. And, I mean, the only sort of, I don't know if you'd even use the word criticism I heard the first day is at least one rider thought, Rosie DeProvnik thought maybe they had harrowed it too soon. That they should have kept it sealed maybe another couple races and then harrowed it, and that there was some water on the far turn. This was after the first race, but Calvin Burrell, who's never been a Polytrack fan and just came back covered in mud, was just so happy. And he said he thought actually, given all the rain they had, that they had done a great job with the track. It seems to be playing very fair. Fast horses can win on the lead. Horses are closing, and if you go too fast on the lead, as happened in the Alcibiades, better watch out for those late runners. So it doesn't seem to be biased inside or outside. So I think so far everybody's very positive. And interesting with yesterday's race, the Breeders' Futurity won impressively by Cart Diem. If I'm pronouncing that correctly. Elliot Walden of Windstar Farm said he would not have been there had it been on Polytrack because you're trying to get to the Breeders' Cup, and it's only the horse's second race. You want to know something about your horse. And Steve Askew, his horse finished second in Bold Conquest, said the same thing. He probably would have gone to San Anita to get the two turns. And the point Steve was making before the race was that not only do you have some serious contenders for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, now out of the Breeders' Futurity, but for the 3-year-old picture next year. Whereas in the past, how many times have we seen in recent years the winners of the Alcibiades and the Breeders' Futurity actually did not run in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile or the Juvenile Fillies? They opted for the turf versions of those races because that's basically what they were, turf horses.
All right, let's talk specifically about some of the races, and we're going to go to the turf first to take a look. The First Lady yesterday, Grade 1 event, $400,000. And Jenny, I picked this up because we're going to watch the stretch run here. It will be number 7, Day at the Spa, getting it done. The very nice New York bred. It's 7-2. The favorite, the betting public was kind of willing to forgive the dud last time from Falimbi. Falimbi, the number 1 horse, runs third, and here is the 5-2 favorite. But again, leading down the stretch and holding on by over a length was the really nice New York bred Day at the Spa. And I will add, ridden by John Velasquez, that we mentioned earlier. He had a huge day yesterday at Keeneland. What were your thoughts on the First Lady?
Yeah, and I think was that the biggest price of any of John's wins, at least in the stakes, the 960. He hit the Grade 1 Pick 3, starting with this race. Yeah, you're right. Day at the Spa, very nice filly. You don't need to call her a New York bred. I was looking at 15 cities. I think he stands. Doesn't he stand in Kentucky now? Your New York breds now. There's a lot of Kentucky breeds there, but she's just a runner. Ran loves this course. Ran very professionally. To be honest, I was a little surprised Falimbi was the favorite.
Yeah.
Over some of these other, Better Lucky. She's, run well at Keeneland before. Getting back to turf. It was a really good field. It's interesting. It's the only one of the stakes yesterday that was not a win and you're in. And I don't know if that's because it's a mile. I think in the past it has been a win and you're in. But horses have done very well coming out of this race. It's a Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, which I believe at Santa Anita. Is it a 1.25 miles or is it a mile?
1 3/8, I think.
8.
Yeah.
It's a 1 3/8. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see then what these what these horses do. And it was turf rated good. Obviously, you can have a lot firmer turf at Santa Anita. But great group of fillies, and it was a great start to kick off the Grade 1 Pick 3 yesterday. Grade 1 Pick 3 yesterday.
Well, and I want to throw one thing in, Jenny, that you'll appreciate, and Seth, get your comment. I wrote this morning on Twitter. It occurred to me as I looked back at this race and looked at the chart. We have to endure the naysayers always looking to brickbat anything around the game about how, horses just don't stay around and we don't get to follow them, we don't get to see them. Well, gosh, we had 3 5-year-olds in this race finish first, second, and fourth. And if people have been coming to Keeneland for a number of years, let's see, they would have seen Day at the Spa, Better Lucky, and Center Court. They would have seen them in the Queen Elizabeth in 2012. Then you could have come back last year. You could have seen them in this race. And, here they are again, finishing first, second, and fourth. The horses don't run anymore. They don't stay around. And gosh, every one of them is on Lasix for their whole careers. And Lasix is shortening careers. But
yeah, right. Molly Lemonade's over in there too.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it is just unbelievable the falsehoods that get trotted out. And there's stuff like this to throw in the face of all of those that we listen to.
You are exactly right. But you know what? The people that are espousing that stuff will not listen. That is their story, and they're sticking to it. I've just been reading on Thoroughbred Daily News the Lasix debate there, and I thought Jerry Brown, as a big bettor who deals with a lot of big bettors, as his clients and stuff, with the Thoroughgraph sheet, was talking about Lasix and raising the point that you're going to find your big players are going to be betting less without Lasix, and that, why is nobody consulting the bettors? And I just thought I disagreed with one thing he said. I was intrigued by his proposal that, the first thing he said that I absolutely agree and just wanted to stand up and cheer was that they're throwing into the debate, and I know we're getting off point, but the Lasix and illegal drugs all in one. No, 2 different issues. But they make the public think you're talking about something illegal.
Exactly.
He raises as a solution that horses, he says, starting with next year's 2-year-olds, he proposes that you have to go back to the days when you had to be certified by a state vet to be a bleeder and to run on Lasix, and then, but then you would carry a 5-pound penalty. I think that's an interesting idea. The idea of let people run off, they want to run off, but there's a 5-pound penalty. Where I disagree is the days of when you had to require a state vet was not with cheating and hypocrisy about who got certified. I thought Kentucky actually had it right then. They just said, if you want to run on Lasix, we're not going to make you put blood up a horse's nose or get somebody to lie about it. We're going to let you run on the Lasix. And I also wonder, why should you make horses have to bleed to run on Lasix? And, you know, the people who want to use it absolutely believe that it helps prevent it and that Lasix can be, bleeding can be cumulative, so why would you not? I mean, of all the problems that are broken, as Steve Christ has eloquently written a lot of times, Lasix isn't one of them. It's one of the few programs that actually works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Jenny, we only got a couple of minutes left, but I do want to get some thoughts on Wise Dan, and I'll tell the guys in the control room, just skip over to the Wise Dan race. We're going to pick it up right from the beginning. And I tell you, Jenny, I was watching the NBC broadcast yesterday, and when he misses the break, I said, oh, it's all over for him. Even down the backstretch, he was in a bad position. And even at the 8th ball, you think, he's absolutely up against it. But this horse is just incredible, and a great ride from John Velasquez. And it was also funny after the race, the NBC broadcast, they interviewed Charlie Lepresti and said, what do you think, maybe the Breeders' Classic, the Breeders' Cup Classic? And Charlie said, yeah, you know, I'll leave the door open. I'll see what Mr. Fink says. They interviewed Morton Fink like 3 minutes later. He says, no shot. We're going back to the mile. But what were your thoughts on Wise Dan yesterday?
Oh, well, he's just amazing. And, you know, I wrote that he makes the extraordinary look routine for him. And you just, you know, Dale Earnhardt made a great point before the race. Says it reminds me of what somebody said about Tiger Woods one time. When Tiger Woods was at his peak, and though he got a lot of accolades and a lot of praise, he said his friend was telling Dale he still doesn't underappreciate for what he's done. He said, I feel the same way about Wise Dan, that even though he has a lot of accolades and stuff, just really looking at his record, he's only lost once on turf. He's just, you know, he's multiple stakes winner on, you know, all 3 surfaces. He's just incredible and a real fan favorite. And speaking of keeping horses around, and, you know, I don't see them going, you know, is it really fair at 7 to ask him to run 1.25 miles on a track he hasn't been training on? I don't see that. What I would like to see is go for the 3-peat in the Breeders' Cup Mile on turf. And if he comes out of that, well, and of course I'm speaking selfishly, come and run in the Clark Handicap, which he won in 2011 at Churchill Downs Grade 1 on dirt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm with you. I have no problem if they pick the dirt mile. They mentioned yesterday only one other horse has had the 3-peat, the great Goldacova. So I think that adds intrigue to the card. There's enough intrigue with the Classic, so I have no arguments with him. But this yesterday, this was phenomenal.
It's just so cool to see a horse like that. It was like, you know, it's what racing is about. And there were some nice horses in there. You know, some people say, there were some really nice horses. Silver Max, normally, you know, you get that kind of pace with him. He's gone, like Charlie said. He thought, how are you ever going to? And then, you know, Wise Dan looked like he was like fighting Velasquez. And you know, mid-stretch, it looked like that there could have been an upset in the making. But he just finds a way to win, like he did his first race after college surgery when he gets up and wins by a nose. Yeah. Amazing horse that we will not see again for a long time. And kudos to Charlie Lepresti for keeping him at that level. I mean, he's what 11 Grade 1s now? He hasn't been in anything other than a Grade 2, and very few of those in like 3 years. And again, I got to just bring up one more time. I'm very proud to say the first time Wise Dan ran on turf was the 2011 Firecracker Handicap, and third in that race, and probably should have been
Strike Impact.
Strike Impact.
Nice.
Well, you know, Glennie, one of the things I thought was notable about this, and I commented yesterday after the race about it with Lepresti, Charlie Lepresti is not a boisterous guy. And anybody that knows the way he comes into races and the way he presents himself and his expectations, if you just read the way Charlie was feeling about Wise Dan coming into this, he basically was saying he shouldn't lose unless something unusual happened. I mean, and I thought, you know, like Bill Mott is always easy to read about his horse's chances. Lepresti made it obvious how confident he was going into this.
Yeah, you know, I agree with you. And another reason I don't think they'll go in the Classic is he was saying afterwards he might have to change his style. He might have to show more speed on dirt, and then at a mile and a quarter. And yet, show speed on dirt with Byron in there and Marino. I just don't think, you know, they're doing what they're supposed to. You're supposed to do with a horse. You put him in the places where he has the best chance to win, and he's doing it in Grade 1 company in $1 million races. You can't say he's ducking. He can only run against the people that come up. But I think I agree with Charlie. He doesn't have anything more to prove, and the way they've handled it has helped his longevity. And speaking of, because I know you're out of time, but talking about the horses staying in training, Close Hatches, heavy favorite today. Garrett O'Rourke yesterday, the Juddmonte manager, was saying, don't rule out that if she's doing well, they'll keep her in training at 5.
Wow.
So, which would be really, terrific.
Absolutely. Jenny, terrific speaking to you. Always happy to do it and get a little update on Keeneland after their first couple of days. We'll talk to you again.
Great. Sorry I got off point there.
No, that's fine. It was
good.
Good info. Absolutely. Jenny Reese from the Louisville Courier
Thanks,
Journal.
guys.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to the end of the show, and I guess we'll see you, in 4 weeks?
We'll see you next month, and next week got a wedding, and then we're at Far Hills for the Grand National, and then 2 weeks at Santa Anita. We'll come to you live in the mornings from Clocker's Corner a week before, and then the morning after.
Of course, the replay's right here on the Capital OTB TV network. Don't forget, questions, comments, suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. LooseOnTheLead@yahoo.com. Let us know if you have anything, as I say, questions, comments, or suggestions. Going to wrap things up for this edition of Loose on the Lead. Seth Merrill from Equidaily.com. Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's At the Races. We're here every Sunday morning from 10 until 11 a.m. We'll see you again next week.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.